Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode here at The Damage Report. Very excited to come to you not only with an hour of news, but with the best co-pilot I can imagine. Adrienne Lawrence joins us once again. Adrienne, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. Excited to learn just a few minutes ago that your book, which we've talked about a couple of times, Staying in the Game, the playbook for beating workplace sexual harassment, is now available at shoptyt.com.
No Yay!
Check it out.
I'm pretty
learn
excited
something.
about that.
That's awesome. I thought about going into what we were talking about before, but I realized that would probably be a weird non sequitur. But anyway, very excited to have you here, in particular because even before we go live, you have already caused me to think differently about one aspect of a story that we're going to be leading the show off in a little bit. So, as always, your expertise is going to come very much in handy, and we're glad to have you here.
Thanks, I'm excited.
That said, thank you everybody for watching, regardless of what platform you're on. It would be great if you could hit the like button and share the stream. I can see in both the YouTube and Twitch chats 1,000 of Adrienne's faces in emoji form. It is all over the place, so that's awesome. Thank you very much, people. And let's see. You can certainly reach out to us during the show if you want to send us comments, tweets, super chats, things like that. We'll read them as we go through this hour of news, but understand ahead of time that after our program is over at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, if you're over at twitch.tv/TYT, Jordan Ewell is going to be diving deep on Deep Dive, and you can join him there. Another awesome jump into the news. Probably going to be talking about Yemen. I know it's been one of his big topical focuses recently. But through the course of this hour, we're going to be talking about one of the most recent, yet another egregious act of police brutality, apparently. We've got Fox having to walk back multiple stories that they focused virtually all of their time yesterday on. We've got Oklahoma passing 3 anti-choice bills simultaneously, just ramming them through as fast as they can. And then anti-vaxxers. We've got 2 different ways that anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers are choosing to be just the worst. And so that'll be a lot of fun. With that said, Adrienne, you ready to jump into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Just one day after last week's verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial, the police apparently shot in incredibly bizarre and barbaric circumstances a man named Andrew Brown Jr. And as the days have gone by, we've been learning more about this particular case. And in fact, we're gonna show you a bit of one of the sheriff's statements about what happened, and we'll have some reaction from the family to what happened. But there's one aspect of this I wanted to focus on initially. So it's a 42-year-old man shot by sheriff's deputies in Elizabeth City last Wednesday, when, as CNN puts it, they attempted to serve him with an arrest warrant. And that is generally how the media has been presenting it. But Adrienne, we were talking before the show, and you pointed out that that is very much not how the police have actually described what happened. So what have they been saying?
So initially, when there was a kind of a conference with the sheriff of that county, he said unequivocally that it was a search warrant. And he said even, I can confirm that it was on execution of a search warrant. Nothing about an arrest warrant. And these warrants are very different. A search warrant, as it may imply, is to search something, as opposed to an arrest warrant, which is to seize someone. And they're very different things because they touch upon the police protocol that's involved. And so it really is kind of disturbing, this thought of having multiple guns drawn and this man being shot, as his family is saying, execution style, on what police are saying was initially saying is a search warrant, and then somehow that evolves to now saying it's an arrest warrant and it is a search warrant, and the story seems to be changing along the way, and that's very disconcerting, especially since we're trying to get a hold of this footage.
Yeah, I think I'm very glad that you pointed that out. I don't know what has led to that jump from what the sheriffs have actually said, what the cops have actually said, to what the media is now describing it. Maybe it's just ignorance. I don't know. But I am curious. So you talked there about the difference between the two and what it has to say about what would be reasonable for the police to be doing as they approach this case. But I'm curious. Let's say in theory it was an arrest warrant. Does that in any way justify, and I don't mean morally, the cops are not interested in moral justifications, but even in terms of their procedures, if a person begins to drive away, are you allowed to begin unloading your weapons at that person if they're just driving? Well, let's say it was an arrest warrant. It's not, but let's say it was. Are they allowed to do that?
So first, to make clear, like they're saying that there were 2 arrest warrants now and there is a search warrant. So they're saying, oh, everything's involved in play. So we don't know how that will end up shaking out, but if they do have an arrest warrant and the officers are approaching, how they would handle it would depend on the circumstances, which should very much take into account if that individual has a history of violence. Because if that person was considered armed and dangerous and maybe engaged in violent acts, maybe a murder, attempted murder or whatnot, then it would make sense for the officers to have their guns drawn. It's my understanding that Andrew Brown Jr. has a history of drug offenses. A lot of people have drug offenses that doesn't necessarily equate with violence. And so this thought that they needed to have guns blazing and have shot him in the way that they did, it makes you really want to see that body cam footage, because if we're gonna use deadly force, you need to show me that your life was threatened, that you were truly, genuinely, authentically afraid for your life, and that Andrew Brown caused it. And if someone's driving away, once again, the thought of that you need to execute deadly force, it's unnecessary, because it's not like this man presents some kind of immediate threat.
Exactly. And this isn't even the only case like this, where a person appeared to be committing the apparently fatal sin of trying to drive away from the cops and they shot the person. And really fast, we're gonna turn to the video in just a second, but I just wanna throw out, this is stepping far aside from the sort of analysis that we're doing, but it hasn't been lost on people that while it's a little bit difficult sometimes to notice differences in the trend because these sorts of cop murders are so common in America, it does seem like in the wake of the Chauvin verdict, they became noticeably more common. And I saw people opining in multiple forums about the fact that whether it can be said to be, it certainly feels like revenge to some extent. That you would imagine that a cop like being convicted of multiple charges in a case like this, I don't know, would make people be a little bit more hesitant to use deadly force. And yet we saw right off, immediately afterward, multiple killings like this. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, indeed I do. It was something I actually tweeted about moments after the Derek Chauvin verdict, is the pendulum swing. Because the reality is that by holding this officer accountable, what you're doing is shifting the pendulum toward justice and equality. Generally, when Black people in any way have moved toward justice and equality, there has been swift retribution in the back, kind of in the response from the quote unquote opposition. And so in this case, it is totally and completely not surprising that we're now having these shootings of Black people who have been unarmed, in part because, hey, it's the thought of we need to shift the pendulum back, remind these people of their place, and essentially just balance things. And this goes on whether we are cognizant of it or not, because that's how unconscious bias works.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, we have been slowly learning more from multiple sources in what happened with Andrew Brown Jr. So we're going to analyze this from multiple perspectives. First of all, taking with a grain of salt, we have a statement from the actual sheriff. So let's turn now to that video.
Today, we also allowed the family of Mr. Brown and his attorney to privately view the video. This tragic incident was quick and over in less than 30 seconds, and body cameras are shaky and sometimes hard to decipher. They only tell part of the story. Outside investigators, both from the SBI and from 4 other sheriff's offices, are interviewing witnesses and gathering more information.
Okay, so he says it was quick, over in 30 seconds. The camera footage, the body camera footage is shaky and difficult to interpret possibly. Notably, the family was allowed to watch a 20-second clip. And look, I get if the entire incident is 30 seconds, then you can't show 40 minutes of body cam footage, but it does seem strange that they didn't even show the 30 seconds that they're talking about. And I get that footage can sometimes be hard to decipher. I will say, seemingly for juries at times, it can be difficult to understand what's plainly shown in the video. But Adrienne, what do you think about what the sheriff said there?
I think it's extremely suspect. The fact that they allowed them to view just like a hot minute, not even a hot minute of this video cam footage. And also that cam footage that they showed was of the officer who was furthest away from the scene. And that's not to get full perspective as much as it would make it more difficult to see, to hear what was going on. And this really makes you think that there is something that they're trying to cover up, which is also why I wonder what's going on with this whole arrest warrant, search warrant situation, because it seems from day one that they have been hiding things and that something bad went down, especially when we take into context how many officers have now resigned or quit or been put on administrative leave from this department.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, it's like they seem to have learned the lesson. You know, we've had a couple of cases over the last week or so where they have released body cam footage relatively quickly because the public won't take it anymore. They won't, you can't hold it for 9 months. I don't care what Rahm Emanuel thinks about it, that's insane. And yet maybe this is a loophole for them. We'll show a body camera's perspective, not necessarily the one that actually makes the most sense. And we won't show you the whole video for reasons we won't define. And you can't look at multiple perspectives from multiple cameras because I don't know, they act like people, like, is it in a weird codec? They act as if it is impossible to get the footage off these cameras. I don't think it's that complicated. I've never owned one, but I'm gonna put out there that I think that you could release all of it almost instantaneously. I think you could set up sort of a Dropbox, drop all the footage, and we can watch it. They choose not to do that.
One of the excuses they came up with was saying we need time to be able to edit so we can blur out the faces of the officer to protect their identity. I'm like, dude, just send it my way. I can click, click, boom on my iPhone if you need to blur out some faces. Like, get out of here.
Yeah, Adrienne could throw a cat face up on it or something with a simple filter. Also, like, you're a cop, you were there. You're showing it to the family. It seems weird that your principal focus would be on hiding the identity of the cops. They're not gonna know who the cops are from seeing their face anyway. The entire thing makes no sense to a rational person who's outside of this case. I get that. In any event, we showed you what the cops had to say. Now I wanna turn to the family. So here is one of the most recent media appearances.
If it was you, I or Khalil who committed an act and took a person's life unjustifiably, we should be in jail right now, should be arrested.
Right now.
You should be arrested. Just because you wear a badge, shield, or star doesn't give you the right to kill. And if you kill, doesn't give you the right to be free while a clear killing is on video, unjustifiable killing. If it's unjustifiable, it's homicide. If it's by another and it's intentional, reckless, it's murder.
Adrienne?
Oh yeah, because the thing is homicides, no matter what form they take, committed by the officer, it is considered a homicide, it's murder. It's the question of, is it justifiable? Is it a lawful murder? And in this instance, and given all of the circumstances and all of the excuses we're getting, it kind of seems like this won't be a justifiable homicide, and some people may be facing charges at some point in time.
Yeah, the whole thing, we don't know. There's a lot that we don't know, and I think that Adrienne and I have both attempted to be as reasonable as can be expected, considering the clear pattern that's been established over the past few weeks. In wondering about what potential explanation could justify shooting a person multiple times, including with this just came out, the family released the results of an independent autopsy saying that he was also shot in the back of the head. For so far, and more information could come out, the only explanation that's been provided is he tried to drive away, which to a reasonable person does not justify literally anything that happened. And when you have, as Adrienne alluded to, 7 deputies have been placed on administrative leave, 2 others have resigned, 1 deputy has retired. That's not normally what we see in this sort of case, so it makes one wonder what is really going on. One would have to wonder less if they would release the 6 or 7 other body cameras footage that apparently is there since so many people were on the scene. I guess all of them were turned off. I don't know, but the entire thing is not only disgusting and a tragedy in the way that so many of these cases are, but this has an added layer of something shady and suspicious appears to be going on. Yeah, okay.
Yep, that sounds right.
Yeah, well, we're gonna see if any other big breaking news comes out on the story as we continue, but for now we will turn to other news. But first, I want to see what's going on in the audience. I also wanted to let you know that at the beginning of the show, I let you know about the next episode of Deep Dive, which is coming up at 11:30 at twitch.tv/TYT after our program, and I speculated that Jordan Ewell, who's done great work covering the situation in Yemen, most recently raising a very large amount of money to support the people who are suffering there, is going to have Iman Saleh on as a guest doing a hunger strike for Yemen. She's had to stop the strike under doctor's orders. So Jordan is going to be catching up with her to see how things are going. So they will be talking about that situation. Now, from the audience, we have super chats from people like Matthew, who says, it's my dearest sister's birthday. So I'd please love it if you could give a shout out and a happy birthday to Kimberly. This is her first birthday present. Kimberly, happy birthday. I hope it's a good one. As good as it can be considering the state of the world. Allison got her first dose of Pfizer, such a relief. My arm is sore and my cell signal is amazing. That's great, those little silver linings, because the nanobots are silver. The Novel Shark says, hey, Tabletop Dragon, post SW Armada tournament update. I got third, much better than I normally do. Thanks again for the dice blessing. Thank you for the update and glad that our blessing helped you. Analytical says, got my second Moderna about 2 hours ago. Still waiting for the 5G to kick in, though my Wi-Fi seems to be doing better. Thank you, John, for keeping me sane during the pandemic. Anna, thank you very much. Glad you got vaccinated. Okay, Peter Hamby says, we all started to believe aspects of policing after the Chauvin trial would be a wake-up call for cops to know we are watching as well. So does this mean that it did not, but made it much worse? Shaking my head. I think Adrienne did a very good job of explaining what might be happening around the country as a result of that. It's entirely possible that they were watching, just not that they came to the conclusion about what they should do going forward that we might hope. Yeah. Okay, over on Twitch, Vitingale, thank you for the raid, do appreciate that. Black Raven gifted a tier 1 sub, very nice of you. Tell Me What to Put did as well, and a Little Bits did too. Thank you to all of you. Thank you too to Rebel Mitch, who subscribed for the 10th month in a row, and That Cute Bird did as well. Thank you, That Cute Bird, I really appreciate that. Black Raven subscribed for 3 months. Thank you to all of you. There's a lot of messages. We're gonna see what we can get to as we go through, but for now we are gonna jump back into the news and mix things up a little bit. Oh geez. Fox News has had to retract multiple stories over the past 24 hours, just little stories that they focused almost all of their coverage on yesterday. The first, here, you're gonna have them retracting their big story about Biden apparently having a plan to restrict you to 1 hamburger a month.
On Friday, we told you about a study from the University of Michigan to give some perspective on President Biden's ambitious climate change goals. That research from 2020 found that cutting back how much red meat people eat would have a drastic impact on harmful greenhouse gas emissions. The data was accurate, but a graphic and a script incorrectly implied that it was part of Biden's plan for dealing with climate change. That is not the case.
Yes, so the graphic and the script, which is on these scripted shows, what I would call the show, implied that it was Biden's plan. Yes, it implied it. All of their chyrons implied it. Bye-bye burgers, they would say. The later shows, after that's their straight news show that got it straight wrong. Their later shows cut out all of that stuff about the study and the greenhouse gas emissions and just talked about Biden's plan to restrict your burgers. So that was, Adrienne, that was a retraction to some extent. I don't know, what did you think about it?
I just find it extremely comical. It's like it's Fox News. They have a wealth of resources and they can't even get it right. They're so busy trying to condemn the Biden administration that they're essentially serving up less than good meat. Lots of bull, that's for sure. And so the entire thing, which we talked about in the pre-show yesterday, began as a result of a Daily Mail article. The Daily Mail article made stuff up. It just straight made stuff up. There's nothing in Biden's plans about restricting your meat consumption or 4 pounds a year or 1 burger, nothing. It just doesn't exist. And so the right-wing media thought
oh, that's great. Our viewers love feeling like victims and they love stuffing themselves full of beef. So let's combine those two interests. And they then started talking about the Daily Mail article, except even Fox seemed to understand that having a bunch of graphics that attribute this information to the Daily Mail probably isn't gonna pass the smell test. So they started attributing it to the Department of Agriculture. That's not even where it was attributed to in the Daily Mail article. They just lied about the source because the source is obviously not at all reputable. But the issue is that while I guess they deserve a minimal amount of credit for retracting it. Yesterday, I predicted that they would never actually admit that they were wrong when it turned out that they were. What do we think in terms of all the people that saw it, Adrienne, all the people that saw their coverage on that show, on The Five, on Jeanine Pirro, on Sean Hannity, all of those, all the people who tweeted about it, politicians and pundits and all of that. So now you have the retraction. What percentage of people are gonna be reached that were reached with all the coverage?
Oh, you know it'll be nil. It'll be so minuscule. And people, it's like those people who read things on Facebook and they hold on to it, latch onto it. So then they look for confirmation bias when they're doing their daily life and say, oh, that is true, that is true. And it takes the will of God to disabuse them of their ignorance. I think that that's exactly what's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if meat and shares of beef and companies end up spiking because people are trying to seize them, just like it happened when there's this rumor that Obama was going to take away your guns. Same kind of thing. The ignorance sells, and who knows? Maybe somebody's getting a kickback along the lines.
Yeah, and there's never any learning. So Biden's going to steal your burgers, which I guess is not as bad as a couple of years ago. AOC was just going to ban all cows. Remember that? The Green New Deal was going to ban your cows. I mean, it wasn't. It didn't say that, but that didn't stop them from believing it from that point until now. They still believe it. And so this stuff about the burgers, like you didn't, initially they had to cite the Daily Mail thing. But a few hours later on Fox, it was just a known quantity. Every conservative knew about this. You could tweet about plant-based beer and everyone knew what it was because it filters out through their media ecosystem almost instantaneously. So it's good that they retracted, but yeah, as you alluded to, I don't think any conservative is gonna feel like that was wrong and I should learn something as a result of this. That when a piece of news comes that is just so delectable, like a nice burger, and really convenient, and it makes everything that I feel right. It just agrees with everything that I believe. Maybe I should be a little bit more cautious about that stuff. I don't think that that's gonna be the product of this retraction.
Nope.
No, and you know what? It's not even the only time that had to happen. So yesterday on Fox, they went mad about a story that came out about supposedly migrant children in detention at the border were gonna be given copies of a kid's book that Vice President Kamala Harris had written. So here is some coverage yesterday about that story.
Harris's office saying they weren't aware of these welcome packs and that they're usually organized by members of the community. Wow, Dana, imagine if Trump gave Art of the Deal to kids in cages. I just I can't even see what they would say about that. I don't know. It's kind of silly when you think about it. Right, what do you think's going on here?
Okay, so it's kind of silly when you think about it. What do you think's going on here? Well, so it struck even him, a person with the minimal critical thinking capacity of a Jesse Waters. It struck him as silly. What do you think's going on here? Well, yeah, it was silly because it wasn't true. It didn't happen and they didn't care enough to actually check before running with it and having a panel of 4 experts, millionaires, break down the fact that supposedly these kids were getting the book, Adrienne.
Oh, that's great. And generally with kids and books, rarely can they actually read them. You usually have to help them. So it's like there are so many things that would have made me think, is this actually accurate? But it's so entertaining, the things that these people will run with. It's wonderful that, and I actually thought The Art of the Deal was a coloring book. So I'm surprised that Trump had words, that's a lot.
Yeah, and I guess one significant difference between the two is that Kamala Harris apparently actually wrote her book. Trump had nothing to do with the writing of his book, and the author has spent the last few decades attacking him online. But yeah, it wasn't true. It was convenient. It was convenient, but why would they do that? Seriously, why would they give the book? As if nobody would find out about that, as if it wouldn't look terrible. And by the way, Fox, if you want to get all worked up and angry about something, are the kids being there enough? What do you need the book for? Like, you finally found a part of this story that you're angry about and it's the made up part? No, the real part is horrific enough. Now, the issue is that it apparently took them quite a while to get that story wasn't true, despite the fact, by the way, that fact checks of it in places like the Washington Post have been available. Fox went into a second news day of talking about this. Now, I want to go to Killmead being sort of fact checked on Fox in real time about this story.
Children's version of Donald Trump's books, because he's written quite a few of them. Imagine if they appeared at the border in a bag of goodies as you arrive here illegally?
Well, according to the Washington Post this morning, they're saying that it's not accurate. I mean, Peter asked an excellent question because we had heard that, but they're just saying that a book had been donated to a citywide drive. It's not placed in these welcome bags.
Well, I think the question was if the government was paying for the book and whether or not she was making money on it. It sounds like a third party.
Okay, so that was the question. Well, it was a stupid question because the story wasn't true. So I don't care what your question was. It was all based on a fantasy. I don't know. How tall is the average orc? It has nothing to do with the real world. I don't care what your story was. And bear in mind, he had to defend the question because the question was delivered by his son to the press secretary. But really fast, because there you had Brian Killmead getting like mildly worked up about this story, which is his job. That's supposed to be the skill that he has. And he hadn't actually looked up the story that morning, which is why he didn't know that it had already been retracted. So I want to show you a little zoom in on when he finds out that he's wrong. And I want you to take a look at his facial expression.
Well, according to the Washington Post this morning, they're saying that it's not accurate. I mean, Peter asked an excellent question because we had heard that, but.
Okay, I didn't expect the clown, but I love that like he just like he looks at the camera like in shock and then but not like disappointed in myself because I believe something that was too convenient. I love that, Marissa. Great work. Not like I failed in some way in this job that basically has no bar. I still failed and I should expect more of myself as a grown man. Nope, it's just how can I spin this so that I'm still right, Adrienne?
Yes, that was rather entertaining, especially just like you've observed. Like you'd think he'd exercise some common sense before he'd spend all this time railing off on some nonsense, or at least hedge his bets. Like say, if this were the case, then like do something, but no, he just jumps full in. Oh yeah, he deserves everything.
Yeah, and look, that was his response. Ducey's response is, so we blocked off this time to talk about this story, and it doesn't matter that it's not true. Apparently, we still have to talk about it. So here is his attempt to continue talking about this fake, made-up story as if it's real news.
Two questions. Number one, is that book in English or is it in Spanish? I can't really tell from that image. And the other question is, if the group is spending money to buy the book, why wouldn't they spend the money to buy food or clothes or other hygiene elements? Why would they feel they needed to give them her book?
He's already been told one volunteer put a book in a bag. That presumably the volunteer had the book. There was not a major order. Nobody called borders. That didn't happen. He's already been told that, and yet he's still continuing. He had thought, I'm going to appear to actually have a heart for once and talk about how food and toothbrushes would be better than books. Oh, it's not true? I got nothing. I'm just gonna stick with the script I wrote last night. It's pathetic, and yet it is one of the most watched shows, news-based shows on TV.
It speaks to, unfortunately, the audience. It really just, this guy seems to think common sense is a preferred qualification as opposed to a prerequisite in his position. And so he's really gonna continue going down this path of trying to condemn Kamala Harris and this book situation. It's just, just admit you're wrong and move on, brother.
Yeah. But nobody's gonna, I mean, I guess she admitted that it was wrong. She didn't, like when she announced it, she didn't say, and so all of our coverage yesterday about this, all the front page stories and all that are wrong. People who tweeted about it aren't admitting it. The tweets are still, Ronna McDaniel, head of the RNC, says, after learning officials are handing out Kamala Harris's book to migrants in facilities at the border, it's worth asking, was Harris paid for these books? Is she profiting from Biden's border crisis? Well, yes, presumably she got royalties for that one book that someone once bought and then gave to a kid. Yes, that's still up. Any learning, any evolution, admitting that she was wrong, that she fell for something that seemed convenient and got tons of retweets as a result? No. Senator Tom Cotton says the Biden administration's weakness caused a surge of illegal immigration. Now they're forcing taxpayers to buy Kamala Harris's book to give to these illegal immigrants. No, they're not. You were wrong when you tweeted about that. So anything, any learning? No, there's not gonna be anything. And by the way, it's not impossible. I'm not gonna name names here, but I'm in some private DM groups with other progressive and leftists online. And some of them had seen that story. They're people that are not predisposed to like either Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. And so they thought the story looked pretty bad too. When they found out it was wrong, they talked about it with each other and admitted that they had been wrong in believing it, spreading it, memes and all that stuff. That is possible to do. And maybe to have a little bit better of a radar for BS news like that in the future. But I don't think they're going to. And the issue is that it might be something that caught some random people on Twitter. For Fox though, this is what their day of news was about yesterday. It's not about income inequality or lack of affordable access to health care. They make up stories like this. And they have to, that's how they fill the time. They can't afford to be more discerning in their news. Look at how long they spent talking about Dr. Seuss, a private decision that some corporation made. And so unfortunately, there's not going to be any learning from this. There's not gonna be any change from this. And millions of people are still gonna watch this stuff, come away with completely false ideas of what's going on in this country. And we just have to make democracy work despite that. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just find it to be really interesting how people, assuming it was true, that they were condemning Kamala for getting money off of these books, yet we just came out of an administration where self-dealing was the norm and setting yourself up for kickbacks and making sure that, hey, you get paid in every potential opportunity was very much practice. Like where were these people then?
Yeah, and by the way, if she was making tons of money from the government buying her book to give to migrants, if that was actually true, that would be a scandal that we'd talk about. People who talked about Ivanka and Trump and all of them making so much money, but they weren't interested in those things before. It's all wholly contingent, that's all it is. Anyway, why don't we press on to our next story, another doozy. Oklahoma is already, early in the year, the second state in the country to pass what is referred to as a heartbeat bill, although that designator is false in a lot of ways that have to do with science, so they're not gonna be interested. With the governor signing, I should say, 3 separate bills that curtail reproductive rights in one day. So here he is tweeting about it, he's very happy. This guy holding it up and smiling at the camera. I'm keeping my promise to sign all pro-life legislation based on the incredibly narrow and contradictory designation that I give to what is pro-life and what is not. So yeah, he's gonna do that. He's going to make sure that some of these fetuses are born, and then once they're born, they're on their own. Anyway, let's give an idea of what these bills would actually do. HB 1102 would effectively ban abortions outside of medical emergencies by threatening medical providers with losing their medical licenses for at least a year if they perform an abortion. It makes an exception for, quote, for an abortion necessary to prevent the death of the mother or to prevent substantial or irreversible physical impairment of the mother that substantially increases the risk of death, but not for instances of rape or incest. It's always a fun game to play with these conservative states, which of those they'll allow and which they won't. It's become more common recently, trendy to not allow exceptions for any of those. So are they not merciful? HB 2441, the heartbeat bill, would require ultrasound checks for a fetal heartbeat and would ban abortions if one is detected. It makes exceptions if there is a, quote, serious risk of substantial and irreversible physical impairment of a major bodily function to the pregnant person, but again, not for instances of rape or incest. And let's pause there for just a second. The heartbeat bills have become very trendy for anti-abortion advocates recently because it is a designation that allows you to ban abortions much earlier. So if you had previously done bans at 20 weeks, like an actual date, or 15, and you want to get it lower, then just find something that happens around 6 weeks. And so that's what they've done. The issue with the heartbeat bill, I'll give you my issues with that, but I want to make sure, Adrienne, what do you think about the first that we've talked so far? And then bear in mind, there's another one coming.
Well, I think this is just ways in which these states are trying to get Roe v. Wade in front of the super conservative court to get it overturned, because they want to limit essentially a person's right to choose what to do with their body when it comes to whether they wish to go forth and multiply. And this is just, it's unfortunately an aspect of conservatives taking advantage of the fact that we now have a very right-leaning judiciary. And it's just, it's wild. We're essentially rolling back time to take us back into the dark ages. We're not progressing whatsoever.
What's your read on the current state of the Supreme Court in terms of its willingness to take up these sorts of issues? And if they do, are you expecting that curtailing of reproductive rights will come in the form of them steadily chipping away at things, allowing states to do whatever they want? Or do you think that the Republicans will get what they've been dreaming of for like half a century, just totally reversing Roe v. Wade?
I think that they're better positioned to reverse Roe v. Wade without question. We have Clarence Thomas. He is just foaming at the mouth, just chomping at the bit in order to reverse things, as we saw in his opinion last week, essentially calling out the majority, saying, just say it with your chest, let's do this. And when we have now Amy Coney Barrett, we've got Alito, we have got this right-leaning conservative court that is really, they feel so encouraged and just driven to impose their own personal ideologies on the rest of the nation. And it's just more of the reason why we know we need to go from 9 to 13.
Yeah, definitely a fear. And the challenges or the things that could potentially work their way up are coming fast in multiple states. It's entirely possible that could finally happen. To return to the heartbeat bill for just a second, though, the fundamental issue with these is that they don't mean anything. There is no scientific, no medical, no moral distinction between the state of a fetus pre and post heartbeat. It just doesn't make any actual sense. It is intended to manipulate you emotionally to believe, oh, that seems significant, I guess the fetus is different now. If it was true, if what they were describing was the actual change from not having a heartbeat to having a heartbeat, it would be meaningless. But what you need to understand is that it's even more manipulative than that. The heartbeat bill detects something that is not a heartbeat. It is not a functioning cardiovascular system. It is not a functioning heart. It is a few cells giving off an electrical signal. That's all it is. It wouldn't matter if it was a functioning heart. It makes, again, no moral difference whatsoever, but that's not even what it's doing. They are purposefully calling it heartbeat to put an image in your head that is not in any way scientifically accurate for the period that they're actually looking at the fetus. So understand this is just manipulation from floor to ceiling. But in any event, there's also HB 1904, which would require abortion providers to be board certified in obstetrics and gynecology, a move that critics say is unnecessary as some abortions earlier in pregnancy can be performed by administering pills. I would say to those critics, you dummies, they don't care. They're not doing it because they believe you need the expertise. They're doing it to make it harder to do. They want you to have all of this extra training to do something that they will then put you in jail if you actually do. Adrienne, it's just, I feel like what you just said, like we are going back in time. It's like I've stepped through a portal into the 1950s and Republicans, despite their inability to win a national election, rule seemingly everything.
Yep, and it's just, I don't know, I just see so much hypocrisy and just ignorance in this, in part because it's like, what's the motivation other than to control people's bodies? Then what happens? They end up having these children who are unwanted. So you're creating generations of people who will end up probably feeding the criminal justice system. So what, you want a higher body count so you can make more money off of the fact that we're having a privatized prison system and there's a lot to benefit off of that? It's like, and also we already have a world that's inundated with too many people to begin with. Like, it's illogical and it's just so incredibly ignorant. You can't, every which direction you look, it makes no sense.
Yeah, just disgusting. And seeing it and knowing that there's like millions and millions of Americans that are like, yes, this is what I want out of my government. Ignore the actual crises that I say bother me. I have economic anxiety. I don't have no interest in my government actually doing anything about it. But just talk about cancel culture, make abortions more difficult to have, and we'll be fine. And that delivers them. Like, Oklahoma will never have a Democratic governor. This is all they need to actually deliver. In a state where I'm going to guess it was not super easy to get an abortion to begin with. Before these bills, I have a feeling it was pretty difficult. Anyway, okay, we're gonna read a few super chats and then move into a story that we had to bring back about a guy training cops who is one of the most abhorrent individuals I think I've ever had to watch in action. So first of all, Derek Buchanan says, thanks for some trustworthy news, thank you. We make mistakes too. I love to admit when we've gotten something wrong. I love to admit when my predictions are wrong, and that doesn't even matter. But that is unfortunately pretty rare. Chris Rickard says, so how much would Fox pay me if I went on to say that I have it on good evidence that Biden is a face swap George Soros who drinks whiskey made from pig's blood, gonna make crap up, go all the way? I don't know. Are you blonde? They might bring you on for a couple of segments. I don't know. Matt Gunnarsson says, always depressing to hear about police shootings. Will it never change? But at least John and co keep up the good work. Yes, I guess. I don't know. Some small things change every once in a while. We got our 7th cop to be convicted. That's something, Adrienne. That's almost history.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, Jesus. Callie Priest, thank you for your super chat. I appreciate that. Forbesilla says, I wonder if John can start a segment without clearing his throat. No, I don't think so. I just don't think it's actually possible, Forbesilla, but we'll see. Over on Twitch, thank you, Wister Mapit, for subscribing for the 6th month. Thank you for that. H. Townden for 5, appreciate it. Care Chung for 4. Riesel for 6 says spending them Bezos bucks, appreciate it. Leftover Zach hit 8 months, thank you, says what up dragons, what up to you? Okay, let's see. Tempo Dan says, even in the Bible, Adam wasn't alive until God breathed life into him, meaning life starts at first breath, they don't even follow their own rules. You're assuming they've read that book. The problem with the Bible is that sure, it has all of the lessons that God wants us to learn about the world, but it's still a book and it's long and it's written in old timey language. Who's gonna actually read it? That is apparently the truth. I mean, it took Marjorie Greene like a week and a half to read the Green New Deal. Like, you think she's reading the Bible regularly? I don't think so.
But John, this is why it should be a coloring book. Hey.
Yes.
Hey, more coloring.
Hey, Adrienne. I bet they'd let you put that in the bags for the migrant children. I bet they'd allow that. Anyway, and don't write in. I'm sure there are many coloring book versions of the Bible. I am sure that there are many. Anyway, okay, so with that, let's turn from a little bit of fun to whatever the D block is today. I want to talk about an individual named Dave Grossman, a guy who might be able to make the claim to have trained members of law enforcement and in law enforcement related fields more than virtually anyone else. And what he's been training them in is insane. And it's not difficult to imagine how it could have helped to contribute fairly directly to the widespread police brutality that we see on a daily basis in America. So he has a thing he calls Killology, and I can define it, but you almost don't have to. If it's called Killology, it's not good. But anyway, he created and popularized it. It instructs his students to be less hesitant to use deadly force in defense of their innocent neighbors. His fixation on this mentality is seemingly fueled with a messianic self-appointment to save the flocks, as he calls, those are civilians, by training sheepdogs, which he defines as lawfully armed community members, to treat even the smallest of American towns like war zones laced with imminent threats. So he's got Killology. He says, all of you are too hesitant to murder people, / I'm really into Christian imagery. Anyway, in his America, it's a terrifying place where police are both the primary targets of and defenders against super predation. Though many independent sources show that the violent crime rate in America has steadily declined since the early 1990s, Grossman maintains that America is now scarier than ever, and that cops may well be the ones with the most to fear. He says, we know that if it were not for all the body armor, bulletproof vests worn by officers, law enforcement fatalities in the United States would easily be double or even triple what they are today. If this is not war, then you tell me what is, and I will not listen to you. So sure, the numbers are low, but in my mind, they could be higher. And so cops need to be more ready to kill people, Adrienne. They sure have seemed hesitant, haven't they?
Oh, yeah, number one, that doesn't seem to be the case. I'd be afraid if they were actually out there hunting us, because that's essentially what this man is encouraging police to do, as opposed to protect and serve, because I thought that was, hey, their little motto, not to hunt and kill. This guy is dangerous, and this mentality that he is infusing in officers is only gonna hurt us as citizens.
Definitely, and I'm not a serious person, so I'm gonna say something that's not particularly serious. So he makes that point there about if you're not for the body armor, the bulletproof vest, we'd be losing way more cops. I'm gonna make a prediction. I don't know Dave Grossman, I really don't. I'm going to guess he's not against restrictions on armor-piercing bullets. I'm just gonna put that out there. I don't know, but he seems really worried about bulletproof vests. We'll see if he's interested in stopping people from getting the technology that would be able to penetrate them. In any event, why is this significant? It's not just significant because he is off giving ballroom speeches that are gonna convince people that they need to basically become mini Zimmermans. No, it's that he has conducted trainings for every federal law enforcement agency, every branch of the armed forces, and cops in all 50 states, leading seminars and trainings nearly 300 days a year. So admittedly, he rises and grinds, I guess. He does a lot of these trainings, but unfortunately, he's training the sort of people that have the opportunity and seemingly the motivation to use deadly force on a regular basis. And it's not just that the official police training is you should be terrified, and if you're terrified, pull out your gun and start shooting. It's this guy saying you've got some sort of natural hesitation to kill. You need to train that out of you. It's wrong of you to think that killing is a bad thing, Adrienne. And this is just a really, really bad combination here.
Oh, absolutely. It's telling people ignore your instincts and just kill. It's problematic to begin with. And I know the Biden administration is supposed to be looking into elements of police reform and things that they can do. And something they might want to look into is having training practices that are uniform and consistent. Because the fact that this guy is getting hired to train law enforcement is very, very scary. And it should not be the case. There's no reason that cops should assume automatically that we're the opposition, that we are in some kind of war, and us-them mentality is nothing more than essentially making us target practice.
Yeah, and look, we sort of speculate about what effect this could have. We can't necessarily point directly to causality, but we can look at these sorts of trainings and see who's been involved in them. So for instance, Philando Castile, who was killed during a traffic stop by a cop in 2016. The officer who killed Philando Castile had previously attended a lethal force class called the Bulletproof Warrior. And why are all of these named as if they're just overly macho, desperate, try-hard YouTubers that are running these things? Because basically that's what they are. They've just aged a bit. So that class was taught by Calibre Press, which claims to train nearly 20,000 officers per year, which should terrify you. Until recently, one of their most prominent speakers was Dave Grossman. As Jamel Hill pointed out, but more training, am I right? Yes, they just need more training. Better question would be which training, and that is a question that they do not want to answer. In any event, we want to give you a bit more of a direct look at what this Grossman guy is all about. So here is some of what you might have been exposed to had you been one of the people to train in one of these 300 or so classes each year.
Once you've made the decision to take a human life, you're a transformed creature, you're a predator. What does the predator do? They kill. Only a killer can hunt a killer. Are you emotionally, spiritually, psychologically prepared to snuff out a human life in defense of innocent lives? If you can't make that decision, you need to find another job.
Okay, so you saw his face. I'm just gonna put it out there. He looks like every guy in Unsolved Mysteries that they haven't proven did it, but you know he definitely did it. He looked insane. If I was in that crowd, I would have been worried that he might kill me at any moment. And that's the guy that is supposed to train cops to be more ready to deploy lethal force. Not just cops, soldiers, FBI, every law enforcement agency in the country effectively has relied on this guy to help them decide when they need to kill.
The thing that really kind of hit me was saying spiritually aligned to kill. Like, what does this have to do with spiritual? Like, is it like the Holy Spirit needs to be in me and ready so that I can gun down some civilian? Like, whoa, this guy is Captain Extreme.
Yeah, it's the weird combination of not enough people are dying with the weird God stuff. Like, I'm an atheist, I get it. I have no basis for talking about this, but like I feel like sometimes I'm a little bit more familiar with their theology and their Bible than they are. Like Jesus didn't release an album called Locked and Loaded. Like that's not what he was about. He really seemed to be against some of the killing. Read a Bible, people. But in any event, I want to jump heads up to the director, Brandon. I want to go to the third video because it gets even weirder if that's possible.
Cop says knockdown, drag out fight, cuffed them and stuffed them. Finally get home at the end of the shift and cop says gunfight, bad guys down, I'm alive. Finally get home at the end of the incident and they all say, the best sex I've had in months. Both partners are very invested in some very intense sex. But there's not a whole lot of perks that come with this job. You find one, relax and enjoy it.
That guy has someone in his basement. I swear to God, someone go and check that guy's basement. Adrienne.
Yeah, I just hope the sex is consensual because you're right. Like he is a little bit crazy and a height. Like that is disgusting. What is he gonna start doing Viagra ads? Like, come on. The thought of I just took a life. Yeah, let me go get laid now. That's your selling point? Problems.
That was among the creepiest things that I think I've ever seen. The look on his face at the end. And as we're doing this segment, I'm going to admit, I'm a little bit worried that now that we've done this, that he's going to kill me. I think that there's a chance. So look, if I turn up in weird circumstances, I didn't do it. He definitely did it, everybody. And please check his basement as soon as you can. Anyway, we're like laughing to some extent. It's our defense mechanism. His is spraying with a machine gun. But this is a guy that is influential. This is a guy, all of the people in that room, the mission is, whether he succeeded or not, and maybe he doesn't because he's a terrible speaker. The mission is he wants those guys to leave the room thinking, yeah, I wanna be a bulletproof warrior. I'm gonna kill someone, then I'm gonna go sleep with my wife. That's what we need more of in this country. And hey, what do you know? We live in a country where cops routinely kill people that they didn't have to. It's weird. I don't know what could be leading to that. I just don't understand it. Anyway, okay, we've got a few minutes left. I believe that we will actually be able to make it to all of this. So I'm gonna read just a couple of quick super chats and we're gonna roll into our last story for the day. First of all, Elizabeth Jacobs said in the super chat, men want to control more and more of women's bodies. So control a man's body by making it mandatory for males 16 and up to have vasectomies. So if males can't produce until married, then there just might be less abortions. That makes exactly as much sense as everything the governor of Oklahoma believes. Penguin says, a grown person with a heartbeat but no brain activity is not considered alive. Basic fetus brain activity, muscle reflex happens at 8 weeks, but not real thinking, dreaming much later. Exactly, and none of these physical things have any sort of moral or spiritual bearing. They want to convince you that they do. That is not what any of these debates are actually about. And it's not, they're trying to convince you to shut up as a result of this. What they're saying is not convincing their side. No person is anti-abortion because of a heartbeat. They're anti-abortion and they'll use the heartbeat to push for it, to push for the law. That's all it is. It's not convincing literally anyone. This is the definition of a squirrel, unfortunately, with terrible results as a result of it being passed. Okay, Lawrence Wells says, hi, JNA. I read it in the Daily Mail. Are 7 words a patient can say that makes me cringe and start going into damage control mode. It's hold on to so many people still is frustrating. Yeah, I don't know. The issue is that it's become very common for people to think that they're like doing research on things like 4chan. I guess Daily Mail is a little bit more reputable than where some people get their information from, but not much. Okay, let's see. AN says David Grossman was supposed to come train police in Novi, Michigan this May, but it was canceled due to public outrage. Good. Cancel culture can come for him, and I'm okay with it. Helen says, give tasers to police and let them police. Have crisis groups that respond to gun-related calls, mental health response teams too. Sure, the issue is that in theory, cops are fully willing and able to kill people with tasers too. That has certainly happened, and tasers provide a great excuse for why you were supposedly reaching for the taser, but you somehow drew and fired your pistol multiple times. Sky Comet, thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub, very nice of you. Black Raven did as well. Looks like twice actually. Thank you, Black Raven, for gifting those subs, very nice of you. Miss Tina says, I live in England, UK. Last time a cop shot a member of the public was 7 years ago. I find that very hard to believe, but it's probably something like that. In any event, Miss Tina, thank you. Okay, Sky Comet says, if they overturn it, I believe, referring to Roe v. Wade, gloves will come off. I will participate in anything necessary to get that right back. No matter what it takes, legal or illegal, ethical or unethical, I will protect my rights. I mean, look, effectively, what it would produce is reproductive rights apartheid, where you'd have some states where you have access to it and others that you don't. A case could be made, that's what we have right now, because there are places where in theory you can get it, but there's literally no place in the entire state where you can. There's other states where you have to drive 4 or 5 hours and you have to do it multiple times because you can't actually get it the first time you go to the office. It would be a worse version of the horrible situation we have right now. Okay, RTGJR says, damn it, John, now I want a burger at 10:23. That was not supposed to be the outcome of that story. Tia Lama says, hold my plant-based beer. Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
Swampy says, hey John, I love your show and your passion. Can I get a shout out to the faculty at Oregon State University of Technology who are currently striking for fair wages? The first Oregon University faculty to strike ever. They're great people and professors that deserve better treatment from the administration. That sounds awesome. Thank you for letting us know about it. And shout out to them. Okay, with that, Adrienne, we have not yet on this program talked about anyone terrible. So I think it's time for us to turn to some people who are truly the worst. Let's do it. The anti-vaxxers and the anti-maskers are who they are, and they are very much who they are, very much in public, and they want you to know that they will not stand for reasonable public health precautions. But it has gotten even worse. I want to show you some pictures that were taken at a protest in the UK, mind. So as awful as these sorts of people have been over the last year in the US, now it's on you, Britain. Here's what happened. Chloe Addlestone tweeted out, so horrific to see disgusting people wearing a yellow star at today's protest saying no COVID. I shouted at them and they told me I was a Nazi for wearing a mask. It's indicated, I don't know for sure that Chloe is in fact Jewish, but apparently was called a Nazi for pointing this out. And here are the photos. An individual doing cosplay as Roger Stone here is wearing the yellow star that says no COVID on it. This woman has one as well. I guess they made them and tried to hand them out. But yes, in case it's not clear, and I don't see how it could be more clear, they're saying that they are being treated like Jewish individuals suffering under the oppression of the Nazis. Adrienne, that's just, I guess we shouldn't be surprised, but they're doing this in public. Not just in front of the cameras, but for the cameras. They want to be seen. They feel like they've nailed it with this yellow star thing.
You know what? That is like a combination of audacity and ignorance. Like, how could they legitimately think that there is any kind of analogy here between the Holocaust and having to wear masks and practice social distancing? Like, that is so incredibly disrespectful and disgusting. Any kind of backlash that they received in public, it wasn't enough. Because whoever can go out and do this and thinks it's okay, they really need a helping of some, you know what, I'm gonna help you out in getting this together, because it's not right.
Yeah, these are people in the UK. It's possible they're not conservatives. I will just assume that they're conservatives, although there are certainly people who are not, that are wrong on these issues, that are so desperate to be victims. It reminds me of Dave Rubin's book, Don't Burn This Book, that he was just so hoping someone would burn. Just please burn my book so I can complain about how I've been canceled. And that's what it is. They put on the yellow stars. They are the same as the Jews. Notably, do you know, Adrienne, what didn't happen at the end of this protest? They weren't marched away to camps. Yeah, no, they weren't killed. There were no gas chambers. They were allowed to walk around without masks, certainly without vaccines flowing through their bodies. And they just went home afterward. Another opportunity, as always, to learn something. I have a feeling they did not. But responsible people did try. The Auschwitz Memorial tweeted, instrumentalization of the tragedy of Jews who suffered, were humiliated, marked with a yellow star, and finally isolated in ghettos and murdered during the Holocaust in order to argue against vaccination that saves human lives is a sad symptom of moral and intellectual decline. And boy, have we declined. That is just disgusting. Now, they're not the only ones though. I want to talk about an individual on the city council for Temecula, not far from where we're at actually. Now, Temecula had apparently they had this virtual meeting of their city council where they were talking about how long they were going to remain in virtual meetings. Now, one member of the city council, Jessica Alexander, was not having it, and she decided to analogize her suffering in a regrettable way.
So my last thing that I just want to say, because you touched on a great point, Zach, but I think something that we can all understand and agree with is, look at Rosa Parks. She was accommodated to the back of the bus, but she finally took a stand and moved to the front because she knew that that wasn't lawful. It wasn't truth. So she took a stand. At what point in time do we? At what point in time do we? I'm getting to the point where I'm getting accommodated in my office. I'm getting pushed to the back of the bus. This is what I'm telling you, I feel like. I feel like I'm getting pushed to the back of the bus. At what point in time do I come out and stand up and say I've had enough? And that's what I'm doing. Because for the last year, I've had to go around not because I wanted to always go around without a mask, but the fact of the matter is I cannot put it on. I will not put it on. So it's not that I want to be disrespectful, but the fact of the matter is when is enough enough? And it's been a year. Enough is enough.
Adrienne?
Well, you know what? It gets so tiring when people really minimize, devalue your oppression and like to think that inconvenience is on that same par, on that same platform. It's like you have no idea the suffering, the struggle of family, ancestors, Black people, no matter where they go or experience it, and to equate wearing a mask and again respecting social distancing and taking protocols to Rosa Parks and what she did. Get out of here. Like, how do you even reason or rationalize with these people? It's just, and the fact that they see it as on par, that's so mind blowing.
Yeah, and I mean, the other council members, I don't think they knew exactly what they were supposed to say to that. They're just having a conversation about when they should go back to in-person meetings. I believe, I could be wrong, I apologize if I'm wrong. I believe that member of the city council was a Marine. I could be getting that wrong about the branch of service, but this is a person who's been trained to do heroic stuff, who feels like now this is the chance to be a hero. Like choosing to not wear a mask specifically to send the message that enough is enough. That's madness from a person that we should be able to expect far more from. Take your pick, because they were a Marine or because they're an elected official. Either of those should be enough.
Yeah,
600,000 people have died.
I went to Temecula to wine taste, and they have a robust kind of wine community, and so maybe she was drunk. I'm just like, that's the only excuse I can give you, because this is just absurd.
That is you being very kind. That is best case scenario. I believe it's probably not. And like I'm not gonna play more video, but she said at one point there was no flu this year. That went away. COVID cured the flu. Like, no, but do you get it? We wore masks and it stopped the spread of disease. Like, do you get the point that you're making is not the actual point there? Or she says her argument is that we don't need to wear the masks anymore because the virus is 99.94% survivable. Like, a reasonable argument could be made at some point that, well, we've been tracking the incidence of the virus in Temecula and it's been consistently low. We've got X amount of vaccination and here is why we get to go back to normal. Not, it was never a big deal. Thousands and thousands of Californians have died from the virus. Some of them, her constituents. But apparently, I guess they were just weak because it's such a survivable virus. It wouldn't affect any real people. Like, even at a time when a case could be made, she's making the exact wrong case. And by the way, Temecula, notably, was recently rocked with another scandal. In June, the then mayor, James Stu Stewart, his nickname's Stu, resigned after he wrote an email that, quote, he didn't believe there's ever been a good person of color killed by a police officer. That's what their mayor resigned for. So that's the silver lining, right? Had to leave office, consequences for saying something terrible. Now, he claimed at the time that he dictates his messages because he has dyslexia, and the word good was accidentally added. Now, I want to read that quote for you, taking out the word that was accidentally added, and you tell me if it's better. Quote, he didn't believe there's ever been a person of color killed by a police officer. Nope, that doesn't make any sense. That's not any better. Your excuse sucks, but it doesn't suck that bad. Not for Temecula, because he ran for city council again and he won election in November after writing that email.
Dude,
anything.
Hey, it's like racism, it's just not that big a deal. It's not a deal breaker. But I love the lies, how far people go to not acknowledge their racism. It's like, dude, we're socializing this system. Just be cool with it and like, just do better. But that lie was just, woo, that was up there with Rosa Parks, okay?
Yeah, it's like hiding behind dyslexia in a way that doesn't have anything to do with dyslexia. I guess it's maybe not as bad as the Star or the Rosa Parks, but it's really, really bad. Whether you're a mayor or a city council member, you can't believe things like that and serve the public. But unfortunately, Temecula apparently is not that bad. Is not that against it. Anyway, Adrienne, I apologize for burdening you with so many horrible garbage people, but you're a trooper and I want to appreciate you. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you joining us for the show.
Thank you for having me, and I don't mind it. I run into garbage people every day.
Oh, I'm sure. And by the way, as we alluded to earlier, Adrienne's book is now up at shoptyt.com. I think we have the image right there. Staying in the Game, the playbook for beating workplace sexual harassment, now available at shoptyt.com. So if you'd like to see more of Adrienne's work, you can definitely head there and pick it up. Adrienne, as always, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And by the way, although we only have a few more minutes and I'm going to read a few more comments for you, I also wanted to let you know that not long from now, in fact, in 21 minutes at twitch.tv/TYT, you can head over there and Jordan Ewell is gonna be doing a deep dive with Aman Saleh, who's been doing a hunger strike for Yemen. So they're gonna be talking about that and other news. You're definitely gonna wanna join Jordan for that stream. That said, before we close things off, I wanna read a few more super chats. Minimal Chaos Dragon says, at the hospital with my 5-year-old Zane, getting an MRI and watching TDR helps relax him. Thank you, John. I am shocked that a 5-year-old would watch the show, let alone be relaxed by it, but I do make funny faces sometimes. So I hope that helps in a difficult situation. Amanda W says, my COVID test came back negative. That's awesome. Sailor says, John, you keep talking about Fenton. Any chance you might consider attending Origins, my usual gaming con? I think Fenton was auto-corrected from Gen Con. It is possible. I will say that I'm still not sure that Gen Con is even going to happen. So we'll see about that. Also, I've been meaning to go to PAX Unplugged for literally years. So Origins is a possibility at some point, maybe. Let's see, Aang says, the cops themselves should not be able to turn on and off their body cams. How many assaults are happening that the cop just turns off his cam? So look, I'm far from an expert. I have heard the case made that in some cases cops have to, for instance, speak to people who've been assaulted, sexually assaulted, and there are serious privacy concerns about that, which I get. I feel like in instances not having to do with that, more often than not, the opportunistic turning off of the body cam seems to benefit the police, not the people they're interacting with. Okay, L says, hey John, can you boost EU citizen initiative so that the European Commission stops upholding IP rights for COVID vaccine? I'll post a link in regular chat. So I did not see the link, but I definitely support the citizen initiative. We've been trying to push Biden, for instance, to do the same thing. Hopefully one or both will do that. Happy says, good one, John. You said no one called Borders for the book order. Yeah, I miss Borders. I miss Borders and I miss Walden Books. I have fond memories as a kid at the mall going to Walden Books, and now I can't. It's damn near impossible to even find a Barnes & Noble in LA anymore. Anyway, Elizabeth Jacob says, just want to be clear, not in favor of vasectomy law, and it wouldn't happen because it wouldn't be right, but they want to control women's bodies. Elizabeth, I was not under any illusions that you actually supported that. It's just hypothetical, I totally get it. Anita says, up early to get my second Fauci ouchie. Excited to catch Adrienne and John live. We're excited for you and even more excited that you're gonna be getting vaccinated. Everyone, please get it. Regardless of what you might hear on Temecula City Council virtual meetings, the pandemic still exists and you can do your part by getting vaccinated. Okay, Brian says, any thoughts on Tucker telling people to harass those that wear masks outside? I do. And if you'd like to see them, you should go check out the pre-show. It's actually titled around Tucker Carlson's severe case of brainworms. So that's available on the channel right now. You can go listen to that. Finally, K Marie subscribed for the second month. Thank you for that. K Marie says, best coverage and commentary ever. Thanks, John, and all contributors. You're all amazing. Thank you. You're amazing. No, you are. Diz subscribed for 2 months. Thank you. Sophie loves me for 4 months. Thank you. Very nice of you, everyone. You've got mere moments until the deep dive begins. Hope that you enjoy it. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and we'll see you soon.